One. Hi, this is Dr. Sam Sugar again, recording a victim video. We're here in the end of 2020, in the middle of the pandemic. And I got a call today from our guest, Julia, who will join us in a second, talking about a situation in my own Broward County, Florida. And I thought it would be worthwhile to interview her today on our victim video, which we'll be posting on our website and on our YouTube page. And so let me introduce Julia. Julia, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you have this issue.
Hi, thank you for listening. I'm a native Floridian. My father's Cuban, my mom's Irish, and lived here my whole life. My father came here from Cuba to make a life for himself. And I heard about you and was referred to call you from a friend of mine, Christine Gill, who is an attorney. And I just wanted to put my story out there to let people know that they're not alone.
That's really good and really good of you, because unless this story gets out, it happens over and over and over again. So
Exactly.
as concisely as you can, tell us what this situation is all about.
Okay, so my father owned his own house and he had the mortgage paid off. He purchased land when he came here. He built the house from the ground up. He was an amazing hard worker. He taught me that the only time success comes before work is in the dictionary. And he was a very wise man. I loved him very much. And the only thing he ever asked of us was to never be put in a home, and things happen sometimes with families and disagreements. My stepmom was divorcing him. She couldn't deal with the dementia anymore and put him in a home. And I was taking care of the person. I'm a medical assistant, and my brother was taking care of the finances. And basically, what happened was he had purchased all of our houses as well. My house was in his name because he did not like my husband. So after the guardianship was involved, they forced my house to go into foreclosure
So
due
let me
to my
just let me
stepmom.
stop you for just a second.
Okay,
The original arrangement was voluntary between you and your brother, in that you would take care of his medical needs and your brother would take care of the money issues, right?
correct.
And how did that work out?
It did not work out. Um,
And is that what led eventually to getting the courts involved?
yes,
Okay, so
yes,
once the court, and we're talking about the Broward County courts, uh,
correct.
the judge in your case, as I understand it, was the very well known to us Judge Spicer, and a
Yes,
whole series of attorneys, correct?
correct. Over $200,000 in court fees that my father paid. That it was coming out of his money. He didn't even know it.
Right.
Basically, you
And
know.
of course, that's because Florida law says that any attorney who represents the interests of the guardian, which in this case was South Florida Guardianship Association, was it?
Horrible.
Yeah.
They
Tho-
are horrible.
they get paid, the attorney gets paid out of the estate, while you have to pay your legal fees out of your own pocket, which is
Yes,
exactly what happened to you. Um,
correct.
so continue with the story. What happened once the
Okay,
courts got in?
so my stepmother abandoned him. I took him to the neurologist. I was taking care of him. The only thing they did not want him to do was to drive. He wasn't that far bad off. So I was able to take care of him. He loved his home. He was in his home, and I would stay there with him. Um, and basically, my brother started arguing with him. You know, it's really a lot of psychology. You have to understand a person and the sparks in the brain when they start to lose their memory. And some people do not have the patience. You know, love is unconditional. He's my father. So I would just listen to his stories and the things that he remembered, but my brother couldn't handle it anymore. And so my brother gave it over to Um, he actually gave it over to a guardian, which I fought against him on that. And then I ended up losing in the end because there was so many different issues going on.
So in summary, then, it was a contested guardianship and you and your brother didn't agree.
Exactly. We did not agree.
And so then the court took over. What
The
happened then?
courts took over.
And what
They
did they do to help your father?
absolutely nothing.
And what did they do to hurt him and you and your brother?
Everything.
They
He
have,
died. He died in the home. I didn't even get to hold his hand.
were you restricted from visitation?
Yes. In fact, they're still taking money out of his account. South Florida Guardianship is still taking money from my dead father. He was in the funeral home for 2 months. 2 months. His body sat there. I still have a lot of questions and I'm trying to understand why. And as I told you, the only why I understand is to help other people to try to work it out with family, even though you disagree, to not allow this system to get involved in your life, because once they're involved, they destroy you. They'll destroy your family. And
And
to
they'll do
really
it with,
understand how things work
and
legally,
they'll do it with a smile.
they'll do it with a smile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you had to do things all over again, and we've really just told a tiny little fraction of your story, what would you have done differently? And what would you say to people who might be viewing this video who are in a similar situation?
I love that question because I think about it every day. Communication is so important, it's vital. And to push your emotions aside. If I have to look at the positive and say, how has this helped me? I'm stronger. I'm God's soldiers. You know, many were called, few were chosen. I feel like through all of the weakness, I'm so much stronger. And if I could have pushed my emotions aside and sat and understood what my brother was saying and let him understand me and really become a team with him to help my father through this, none of this would have happened. And so there's going to be disagreements. We all know when there's money involved. My father had like $1 million in his stock accounts, which I believe my stepmom had planned to do. People can get very evil, but if I would have just set my emotions aside and really stayed focused on my father and how I could help him, without getting all of these other people involved, that's what I would do.
So
That's my advice.
for the people who might be watching this who don't really have a personal understanding, how long did it take for the court to begin its assault on your father and you and your brother?
It's still going on. This started in 2016. I have a stack of papers this big of my father suing me for my house. He has dementia. He's in a home. They charge over $1,000 that they're taking out of his account. Actually, the person that was running, taking care of him at South Florida Guardianship, she came over to my house with her husband to try to see the house and see. So I think she even had something in it. They all sort of work together. This is my feeling. Um, and it's it's still going on.
In
So
in all
we're in
this,
220.
okay, in all this time, the person who was in control of your father's life and your emotional well-being was the judge, Judge Spicer. At any time, were you ever able to actually speak to him?
I got to speak once. All of us were at the table together, and um my father was able to speak as well and say, I want my daughter to take care of me. And he did say one positive thing that was, yeah, usually it is better for family to be able to take care of the family. That was the only thing, but it
But
never happened.
but then he turned around and did the exact opposite.
Exact opposite.
And so
Exact opposite.
now, after all this time, after all these years, your father is gone. Your brother and you still are not on the best of terms, I
Nope.
imagine. How much money has been wiped away by this process?
Oh my gosh. Honestly, I don't even have the exact number. I think if I knew the exact number, I would be sick for a couple days. Um,
And what was that money intended for? What did your father want that
his
money to do?
family. I have 4 kids. I have an oldest brother who has a child. I actually have 2 brothers. The oldest brother was not even involved. And then I have 3 half brothers and sisters from his first wife. So I believe, I mean, my father used to tip the mailmans for Christmas. He would leave them money in envelope and he'd always say, never scorn a woman and always pay your taxes. Never get anybody else involved. Like you're saying,
Mhm.
never get once this court and these people are involved, it is it's corrupt. There's no justice. There's no justice. I'm living a nightmare. It's a nightmare.
Do
It's
you
very hard for me to forgive South Florida guardianship. I have not yet been able to forgive them for this.
do you think at any point that this guardianship had any concerns at all about the welfare of your father?
Absolutely not. I It was very difficult for me to go see him. He was in the hood. My father wore Gucci shoes not because he was materialistic, but because he had bad feet. And they had him in other people's clothes. My father had his name initial on his shirts that he had done when he would work, and he was very particular in how he liked to look. He was still shaving himself until he went there, and he was in other people's clothes that was there with him. They put him in a wheelchair even though he could walk, and had him tied down because I believe my father was tenacious and he would probably try to escape. And it was very hard for me to see him because I didn't want him to see me cry, because he was not supposed to be there. And no, he was not taken care of. And that's why he died there.
Was your father over medicated?
Did he have Medicaid?
No, 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 no.
Oh,
Did they over medicate him?
I still don't know. And I'm still looking into it and investigating because he did have a do not resuscitate and they still kept him there. And a lot of people say that's a money scam as well. So it could have been that they over medicated him
But you
because they
don't even
started,
but you don't even know.
I don't even know. They started to give him medicine to sleep because my father would not sleep.
Let me ask you another question. Were you ever threatened by anyone in the system?
Yes, I was.
What did they threaten you
Basically,
about?
what they said to me was that there was a complaint because my father helped me, which my brother allowed my father to help me. My husband left in 2014, and then he wasn't paying me child support. So I'm the baby. Of course, my dad's going to help. My dad would help a stranger. So basically, they made me go to talk to DCF. And I forgot to tell you this, Dr. Sam. And, I brought my father with me and I showed them all the paperwork and I showed them everything. Well, there was never any kind of finding or anything. They never said I did. You know what I mean? Like they were trying to make it seem like, oh my gosh, what's the word?
What they were doing is their typical tactic of demonizing anyone who disagrees with them, even if it
Yes.
means calling them a pervert, a drug addict, a
Yes.
criminal, a thief. It's a very common tactic.
What is
Uh,
the word that when they say you're taking advantage of a family member, like financially?
undue influence. Undue influence.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
that's,
what they were trying to say.
of course, they say it every time. Um, so now that you've survived this, at least to this point, what would your advice be? And I know I've asked this a different way before, but would you ever advise anybody to get involved with probate guardianship?
Never, never. Unfortunately, I always thought that attorneys were there to protect you, and they have integrity and they have to follow an oath. And, no one's going to do anything wrong because they can get in trouble. But unfortunately, basically, I think they all go golfing together and drink and have fun. And they all know each other, even the ones that are fighting against each other. And you really don't get anywhere. No, I would
And it,
say work this out on your own, come closer to your family, and make it work in any way that you can. 100%.
well, I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to record
Thank
your
you.
story. And I hope that things get better for you and that this episode in your life comes to a successful conclusion.
It will. It will.